presentation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and I'd like to start by thanking the organisers for allowing me to speak here today. I'm by no means an intellectual with a great portfolio of work and research behind me. I'm merely an enthusiastic amateur. I have a great love for Cornish history, and it's a great honour for me to be speaking here today. I sincerely hope that my enthusiasm for the subject makes up for any intellectual and speaking shortfalls that I may have, and I do have. 2 years ago, I was approached by Richard Talabot of the Celtic League to write something to commemorate 50 years of the League in general, in particular 50 years of the Cornish Branch. We soon arrived at the conclusion that the first and longest standing secretary of the Kernow Branch should form the subject of this work, a man by the name of Royston Green. I got to looking through Royston's works, and there are a number of them, mostly short pieces, chapters here and there advocating the Cornish cause, familiar topics like recognition of Cornwall as a nation, devolution of the UK, and the desire for Cornwall to have a greater say in our own affairs. Fascinating and compelling as they were, one work has caught my eye, a diamond in the rough, something truly unique, a short pamphlet titled The National Question in Cornwall, a Historical Review, which is a communist history of our land. This idea really intrigued me. We can point to liberal histories, conservative histories, and communist histories of Britain, Europe, and the world. But in Cornish history, openly political histories are really quite rare, and Marxist histories are non-existent to the best of my knowledge. Searching that great fountain of knowledge and trivia of the internet reveals very little on the subject. No names of Cornish communists or Marxists, let alone historians or thinkers, can be easily found. And whatever our views on this ideology, it's clear that this viewpoint, especially overtly, is extremely rare in the field of Cornish studies. Delving deeper into the national question, it becomes clear that Green's work does offer something different and unique. From the outset, it's clear that Green's work is not only overtly political, but also overtly agitating for social and economic change. Here is a quote from the national question, typifying his nationalist and communist sentiments. I quote, "The importance for socialists is to relocate Cornwall's real existing national consciousness with the urgent tasks of defending the economic and social basis of life in Holland." End quote. It's clear that Green is not an historian in the purest sense of the word. The desire to be objective, to study for studying's sake, was not his calling. The unique aspect of Green's pamphlet is his openly political stance. It was published by the Communist Party of Great Britain, so this politicisation is of no great surprise. Indeed, it was seemingly written for a non-Cornish audience to widen knowledge of the Cornish historical struggle throughout the communist movement. However, the national question is not just a leftist rant through Cornish history. Green was obviously well-read and historically literate. Therefore, this work, far from being of interest to those on the left, sheds a fresh light on aspects of Cornish history, offers to expand debates, provide fresh insights, and indeed reaches different conclusions to other historians and thinkers. The national question, despite its short length, endeavours to cover the whole of Cornish history. Understandably, some of the ideas Green has on events in history are not fully expanded upon in the pamphlet due to its shortness. There is not time here today to discuss every event Green covered, and instead I will focus upon some of the more general ideas that he discusses, namely the character of the Cornish working class and how economics affected the Cornish language. Fundamentally, Green believed that the Cornish were inherently progressive and freedom-loving in their economic lives. In introducing and justifying his work, he wrote, I quote, "The object of this study is to help discover the lost history that identifies those elements in Cornish tradition which embody the class aspirations of working people to control their own destiny." End quote. Royston Green strived for a revision of Cornish history to apply the lens of Marxist thinking to historical events, and in particular, industry and economic relations. In the past, and especially in the medieval period, we saw that the nature of working in the tin industry, that loose, flexible pattern of tinners working individually for themselves, as something to be admired. Green saw the characteristic lack of industry dominated by companies and individuals as stemming from an innate Cornish resistance to capitalism. Karl Marx decried the employer-employee relationship as unequal, stating that the proletariat worker was a wage slave, benefiting little from their labour, the system was skewed in favour of the bourgeois employers. This was something Green no doubt agreed with. He saw a Cornish resistance to this wage relationship in tin mining and in share fishing, and cited it as an example of the Cornish workers' resistance to capitalist economic relations. For Green, this relationship was rooted and indeed codified in the standard system of law. The Cornish, in return for the fruits of their labour, were spared feudalism and to a lesser extent mercantile capitalism. For Green, these workers' freedoms stemmed not from the desire on the part of workers to be individualistic and independent, but to be not exploited economically. That the very nature of the Cornish worker dictated the formation of industry and the structure of society itself. In this way, Green's ideas are that the relationships in the tin industry will bottom up, that the workers, the tinners themselves, dictated their own terms of working. This is a very interesting observation. The exact reason for the natures of the economic relationships under Celtic Cornish Studies are not precisely known. There is some speculation that the charters were merely a codification of ancient Cornish practice and customs, and that the Kings of England and Dukes of Cornwall perhaps had little influence upon these charters. Of course, the lack of historical records in this regard makes it difficult to ascertain why the medieval tin industry was economically ordered this way. That noted, we can say with some certainty that the Cornish tinners were remarkably free and certainly different from the feudal relations found elsewhere. Green contends that the nature of these economic relationships, that the freedom they have, helps the Cornish language to thrive. He believed that changes in the tin industry and its economic relations were greatly influential on Kernow and its very survival. Green deviates from most historians by offering a different account of the demise of the Cornish tongue. I quote, "In the same way that the special demands of feudal tin production served to protect the peasant base of Cornish nationality, so its replacement by capitalist forms seems to have worked the opposite way." End quote. It would seem very unwise to consider the demise of Cornish without reference to the introduction of the English church services, the effect of the death of so many Cornish rebels in 1549, the declining intercourse of Brittany, amongst other factors. However, Green does have a point. As well as the turmoil of rebellion in the 16th century, it was also a turning point in Cornish industry. Metal excavation was coming to be dominated by underground mining, and this required investment. This saw a definite rise in a newly emerging class of adventurer, and the beginning of a proto-capitalist economy in Cornwall. As others have noted from William Scound's observations, this new mercantile adventurer class, drawn from the gentry, had a great disdain for the Cornish language. For Green, this was not just because it was disloyal to the Crown and the Protestant faith, but because it was associated with the old means of production. The language was a legacy of the pre-capitalist past, but the newly emergent capitalists believed that social and linguistic changes were necessary to change the industry and the mindset and culture of the workers, that the old traditions needed to be rooted out in the name of progress. As a communist, Green believed that everything in society hinged upon economics. That is to say, language and culture will change when the nature of economic relations comes. Whether we consider this to be the case or not, there is great merit in Green's thinking. Big changes in the day-to-day lives of people will inevitably have wide effects. That is not to argue that the current historical consensus about the introduction of the prayer book and the Anglicisation that brought should be ignored, but simply Green's thesis should be considered alongside those ideas. Although Green blamed the move towards a capitalist mining industry as fundamentally changing Cornish society as he saw it for the worse, he did recognise that wage relations in Cornwall never fully crystallised, and the mining industry from the 16th century onward never fully developed into an industrial capitalist economy. Again for Green, the innate Cornish desire to be economically free shines through in the tough working, tribute and cost book systems of mining. Accordingly, this economic nature of the industry had political connotations and consequences. Although many Cornish workers worked in the same or similar mines, they were not united under a single employer or a single set of working conditions. Green uses this example to explain and defend the inhibited development of trade unionism and labour politics in Cornwall. Obviously, Green, as a communist, was keen to explain why radical left-wing politics never fully developed in Cornwall, as it did elsewhere in industrial regions. He contended that the lack of a wage relationship was one factor, and that the deindustrialisation followed by the slump in tin and copper prices in the second half of the 19th century was the other factor. Other authors have also noted the effect of deindustrialisation and emigration as a determining factor. At the same time as working class politics was becoming organised and agitated for elsewhere, many Cornish mines were closing, and Cornish mine workers were being laid off and moving elsewhere for work. There is a great debate in Cornish history about the applicability of the Cornish motto, one and all, to the character of the people. It has been decried as a joke and a myth that ignores the fundamental Celtic independence and individualism of the Cornish people. This oft-cited argument is backed up by the lack of significant trade union activity in Cornwall compared to elsewhere. Green was at odds with these detractors. Throughout history, he saw in the Cornish people a cooperative nature, an innate equality, and inbuilt socialism, if you will. For him, not only was the lack of trade unionism a historical accident, but it also went against the very grain of the Cornish character. He pointed to the fact that outside of Cornwall, Cornish folk were heavily involved in advocating workers' rights, in both the Chartism movement and in trade unions. He believed that Cornish workers were more than capable of collective action. Green lamented the lack of working class organisation, but doubted that this was in any way indicative of the Cornish character. This is in essence Royston Green's views of Cornish history contained in the National Trust of Cornwall. I think as a historical work it is greatly intriguing, if not always greatly convincing. It is a great shame that Green did not expand the short pamphlet to a larger body of work and explain his ideas more in depth and add more historical research to support his ideas. Most of what I've spoken about previously was written in a sympathetic manner towards the Liberal Green. This was always the intention of the piece of work for the Celtic League, to commemorate the man and his work, not to overly criticise him. I do personally feel his arguments are a little threadbare, even if I do have some sympathy with his political viewpoint. For example, the central thrust of his work is that the Cornish worker throughout history shunned the wage relationship and has been able to dictate their own working terms and conditions. But it could just as easily be explained that the peculiar nature of the Cornish industry owed a lot to the peculiar nature of extracting the metal itself. Found in weird and wonderful places throughout Cornwall and in the medieval period especially, it never required large-scale extraction and the organisation of large workforces. That loose working practices and hiring in self-employed people was the most effective method for landowners and later mine owners. That the Cornish miner grew to be self-reliant not as a result of anything innate in their characters, but as a result of the demands of timber production. The truth is hard to determine. There is still today a large amount of small businesses and self-employed people in Cornwall, which could indicate support for Green's theory. Without precisely knowing why the tin industry and tanneries developed in the way they did, it is difficult to reach a firm conclusion either for or against Green's ideas about the working class. It is lamentable that Green did not incorporate his ideas about the demise of Kernow with existing research and opinion and thus reach a rounded conclusion. Nevertheless, the idea that widespread changes in industry had a wider effect on society should not be dismissed lightly. It would be interesting to collate research about where the language is spoken and then not spoken, and the types of industry, capitalist or not, in these locations. There is certainly a chance to add weight to Green's theories if correlations could be found, or certainly debunk his ideas. For example, could we draw any conclusions from the fact that the last known speakers of the Cornish language came not from the far west of Penwith, dominated by the mining industry, but further east in Newlyn and Malsall, where fishing was the main occupation? I sincerely hope I've done Royston Green justice and brought up some good points and enjoyed what I've said. Thank you. Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
Well, I think I don't think there's any history that you can really look to where the author starts off with the idea that they are advocating a liberal or conservative or Marxist history of Cornwall. I do think personally it's very hard for people to be subjective, to be objective. People always are partly subjective. But the idea of somebody taking a political ideology and applying it to Cornish history, I don't think is something that's happened a lot. I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
I don't know enough to disagree with you.
Well, I think perhaps the things are linked because Royston Green obviously approached the subject as a Marxist. He was looking for Marxist things. He wasn't looking for economic theories and relationships and how a working class work. And perhaps if there were, more overtly liberal, say, histories of Cornwall, that they might shed further light on the kind of investigation of an innate
and to his dying day, he was a supporter of was it post-war or pre-war? I can't remember. But I can remember having a conversation with him pretty close to when the war was falling, the Berlin War, and he was still supporting the East German people workers' state, even at that stage when most of Eastern Europe had stopped supporting it. So he was what one might call a fairly Stalinist, fairly Stalinist, and in terms of academic work, a very reductionist. Things, as you say, were reduced to the economic, and that actually made him kind of marginal to where British social history was going at the time. And people like John Rule and E.P. Thompson, who were arguing for more kind of cultural Marxism, and Roy never quite went with that.
No,
that's just a comment. His papers, are down at the at Trelaw. For several years, there were 2 boxes of papers about that high sitting in my office before they ended up in the library there. So it's a whole set of letters and stuff. Roy, he had very, very small handwriting, which would be like an 18th century writer, which would cover every single bit. I think he must have been influenced by the war or something, where you had to use paper, and every bit of paper was covered by this really tiny, tiny handwriting. It was very difficult to read because it made the hunger strikers and the IRA's writing look quite big.
Interestingly, you said about his relationship with communism. I did find in an old MK newsletter here that a reply, I couldn't find the original letter, but somebody had obviously written in and they were supporting nationalism somewhere in Kazakhstan in the 70s, and then his reply was decrying. That was the wrong kind of nationalism. That was a bourgeois nationalism, and that we were defending this more ideal proletariat nationalism.
And he saw the Soviet Union as encompassing nationalities to its republics.
It'd be interesting to talk to him and see how he reconciles those two. Yeah.
Sorry. Just an observation, really, that sort of whatever one thinks about the flaws of the author of a Marxist critique, how refreshing it is to hear that kind of economic evaluation of history that's devoid of sentiment.
Yeah.
I just felt, wow, that's really refreshing. That gives you some hard things to think about that aren't about vague notions of identity.
Yeah. Well, that's what really interested me.
That's really, it was just refreshing.
That's what interested me in reading it, because you can read all these books about Cornish histories, and you can trace the lives of dukes and gentry figures, and you can see tin production figures. But actually the lives of people, I think, there's almost a kind of gap in Cornish history, especially the further back you go, in what people's lives were like, and it's almost like that they don't exist, that they're just... Well, yeah, exactly.
Especially the political lives, I think, of ordinary people. I think that there's a real gap there. And
well, he saw it as one and the same thing, and in it he quotes the great Irish thinker James Connolly, and it's very similar to him, this idea that somehow the English state, if you will, was bourgeois and capitalist and brought this social system that was unequal, and that Cornish and Irish society were inherently more equal, and I think he saw it as the same thing, that this desire to be against imperialism, if you will, although it wasn't a nationalist in the independent sense, that imperialism and capitalism somehow conjoined. I don't know if he was a fan of Lenin's works on that subject, but yeah, I don't know. It's not obvious that there was friction between the ideas.
But in that sense, surely Roy contained those contradictions, didn't he? Because having said he was economically hard, harsh economic analysis, actually his work is imbued with certain romanticism. The romanticism of the Cornish were and with the Irish, which surely is explained by kind of stereotypes of the Celts as being more, less materialist than the Saxons. Saxons, the progressives, the Celts,
Was that a Marxist trend anyway, though, to romanticise?
Yeah,
Marxism is romantic.
but it runs in total contradiction to what Marx himself wrote.
Oh yeah, but Marxism isn't Marxism.
That's it.
I guess that's the trouble when you approach anything with such a mindset, is that you just conveniently ignore all this stuff we don't agree with, and you just focus on the stuff you do agree with. We probably want to be fair, but yeah. But there's obviously a contradiction between people being self-employed working for themselves. I'm sure Marx would have said that they were, what the words, petty bourgeoisie or non-proletarian. They're not. That's not a particularly proletarian thing, to work for yourself. That's my understanding of Marx goes, so it is interesting. Well, my understanding, or limited understanding, is that lots of people did. They would have a mine, and you would basically go in and say, I will work this piece for this much money, and we can have it on.
I think in the 19th century, surely, what puzzled people was that they were neither self-employed nor employed. Because the forms of labour in Cornish mines gave the impression that they were self-employed, tribute contracts, etc. They meant mine had a lot of independence, but on the other hand, they were effectively employed. You know, I would say that in mining in the 1860s when it peaks, about a third of people are directly employed by mines. And I would say they're all employed, effectively. Their employment contracts vary, and they're not a straightforward wage labour contract as it's known. But they're employees. In that sense, they're proletariat. I mean, what people have said about Cornwall is that you don't get a fully formed proletariat, but then that's based on the kind of ideal state, the idea that all your sole labour effort goes into being paid by the employer. Which didn't actually happen like that anywhere. The revision of social history now is saying that's a kind of oversimplification of what the 19th century was like. And certainly in Cornwall, people would have that, but they also had what Charles Byron called in the 1840s collateral aids. They had access to smallholders, some, not all of them. But even in a parish like Redruth, this one fairly urban, I've worked out that I think 20% of all heads of household had at least an acre. So it's quite high. Access to collateral. So that's the 1840s.
Bit like now, really, isn't it?
Right.
Not much has
No.
changed, really, except you can't get the work in the internet. Yeah.
Awesome.
Just test.
Right, I think that's me finished.
Thank you very much.